like you as a friend, I can't even like you
enough to love you.
Right? Because I live in my own world. I live in my own world. Don't nobody live in this world. My kids will never live in this world. My husband will never live in this world. This is a perfect world that only Tanisha lives in, and I'm always trying to troubleshoot.
Y'all, this is what I be dealing with. Go ahead.
To this episode of Dr. Sade Love Jones. No, I'm playing, but seriously.
Welcome to the Hey New Friends podcast, y'all.
This episode is about love, life, and relationships. So, I mean,
low-key, I feel like one of her favorite topics.
It is. I really just think it's interesting talking about triggers, talking about love life and how to adjust and navigate relationships. I wouldn't necessarily say it's my favorite topic, but it is something that I like talking
Well, I'll
about.
say that you're actually very good at navigating people through conversations as it pertains to this, because you've been my personal therapist on a few occasions.
Yeah, I do. And I think it's really that healing component for myself, that I know a lot of times some things that I didn't say are some things that I did say when my personality comes out and it's really strong, and they're like, oh, you have alpha energy.
I get told that too.
Yeah. And so really trying to figure out how to be softer in those conversations, let a man be a man, and still setting boundaries amongst all of that.
Girl.
And so I've been single for 3 years, though. And so in those 3 years of my singleness, one of the things that I've really learned and I really admire, and I wish somebody would have told me earlier, is date like Lori Harvey. Like, period. Really just date like her.
I really feel like, I love Lori Harvey. I think she's a beautiful young woman. And I think that at 24, that should have been the advice, to date like Lori Harvey, because some people are saying like she's hopping around, she's doing this and that. I think that, for one, it's just in the mainstream because she's still of who she is and the people that she's dating that's around her. I think that it should be normalized on all levels, because the minute you feel like someone isn't serving you in this season or it's just not a good fit, you say goodbye.
But I think that's the part, though. Like, it was an Instagram meme that was like, dating is about collecting data.
Facts.
It's not about collecting bodies. And, you know, among some of those things that you should be learning is what you like,
right,
what you don't like, right? And amongst those things, what are you willing to compromise? Because I have a list of some things, like, yeah, I want all of these, but I have 5 non-negotiables, right? Like, if you don't have these 5 and they're not like...
So what are your top 3?
My top 3 is that you have to be spirit fed. Like,
oh, that's like my number 1 too.
Yeah, like, I need somebody who can literally pour in me, that I'm not doing all the pouring, and that you know God for yourself, and that you can pray, and you can go to him for me as well, right?
I think that's, well, it is number 1 on my list as well, but now it used to look like he had to be a Christian man, right? Or he had to be like this certain religion, but now it's like, I just need you, like you said, to know God for yourself. I don't care what you call him or what you refer to him, but you need to know this higher being, this higher power that you feel navigates and controls life and you can speak to. Yeah, and somebody that can pray for you. Like, I think prayer is so intimate.
It's definitely intimate, you know. And I think that's the most intimate part of any relationship, is that I put you in my prayers. Like, I love you enough that you are in my prayers. You are in my deepest desires, right? Because this is a sacred place for me. This is some of the things that I really, you know, think about. This is what's in my subconscious. I may not ever share this with anybody else in the world, but, you know, that's that type of intimacy. And so...
so what's your second? My
second is definitely being family oriented. Like, for me...
Because you want 1,000 kids.
I mean... I'm kind of further on the end of my... I'm in my late 20s now. You know...
How are you? You are not in your late 20s.
20 to what would be your early 20s?
20 to 26.
20 to 23 is your early. Your mid 20s would be 24 to about 20.
I'm about to be 30, so I feel like you're young. To me, you are.
All I'm saying is
you're mid to early 20s, but you're not on the late ends of the 20s, sis.
I'm 28. I'm in my late 20s.
Well, now that I feel like I'm about to be 30, I feel like you're young. So you just stay over there in your 28 world. Keep going.
I enjoy my 20s. All I'm saying is I don't see myself having children within the next year.
Yeah.
Or maybe
that's fair.
2.
That's fair.
And so when I start, I'm going to have my kids right back to back. I'm going to be pregnant at my 6-week check-in.
I think I like the idea of a man that's family oriented, but it doesn't have to include kids. But you're just saying in a sense, are you saying in a sense that a man who loves his family, who's not just his immediate family that he's going to create with you, but how he treats his own personal family too?
Yeah. I mean, very much so, because a provider, a protector, you know, but also like your family as well, because my family is everything. My husband needs to understand, like, we got to take care of my mama. Like, we have to take care of her, and that means everything, like literally. And if I can't be with a man that understands that or knows that, he's not the man for me, because I know that's a priority for me. Yeah. And so even in myself, like, I feel like my money is my money, his money is my money, and that's it. And so he needs to
I'm different. I feel like I want all one pot.
His pot is all the pot.
So you don't want to include any of your income?
No. Because me working is going to be optional. I'm going to work when I want to work. And whatever that looks like.
See, I mean, I guess that's how how you show up in your life. For me, it's like, I'm going to work, period. And it's not going to be optional. It's just the things that I'm passion driven about. That's just what I'm going to do.
Yeah, and when I want to.
Yeah, so I'm going to probably do it because I'm going to have to do it. Like,
I'm going to do everything when I want to, because like.
Well, I guess in a sense it's still doing it when I want to, but it's going to be something that I want to do. And since, I mean, when you feel like you're in the service industry, you're just always working. So I'll still feel like I'm working.
So when I'm done with my PhD, I'll be 32, right? I'll be 32 and I'll be a doctor.
Right.
And that looks like me practicing when I want to, how I want to, when I want.
That's still service industry and it's still working. So it's not necessarily going to be optional, because the option is you're going to do something that you want to do. So how is that optional?
It's going to be optional, because guess what? If I decide
I just don't see you saying I'm not going to do that type of work. So I don't see it as optional.
It's optional to me, because if I decide I'm not working January and February,
that's
my husband.
Okay, so I think we're just looking at it differently, because I don't feel like that's being optional. When I'm thinking, when I still you working in the industry, but I'm saying doing the work that I know that you want to do. I don't ultimately see you saying I don't want to do it anymore. Goodbye to it. So that's how I was thinking of the optional. I'm like, that's not going to be optional for you.
No, like no. So I guess when I think about my life, I think about when I get married, I want to have my children. I want to have them back to back. I don't want to be tied down to like a 9 to 5 or do any of these things, probably at least until my youngest child is a 4 or 5, where they can, talk and I can know. And
that's fair, because I want to be there through all of the beginning moments and everything.
Through all of those beginning moments. And so what that looks like as far as me working, because I could probably have my own practice and choose which days I want to practice. But we're not dependent on my income, because I'm going to do what I want to do when I want to do it and how I want to do it.
That makes sense. So what's your number 3?
And then my number 3 would definitely, I think my number 3 is really to be resilient. And this looks really different. Okay. But for me, this resiliency is really a part of being optimistic and being hopeful. And being able to see through difficult times and see through those times when a marriage or a relationship doesn't really necessarily feel good, because you know that it doesn't.
You want somebody that don't run away from the problems.
Yeah. And so being able to communicate and navigate through those things.
And face adversity.
Yeah. Because for me, like, cheating is like a non-negotiable. Like, with my husband, I could probably work through some different things with you, but I'm not working through
you
cheating.
Could work through the Instagram scrolling and the liking of the pictures. That's what you're saying. You can work through the liking of the pictures, but you're not gonna work through the DMs.
I mean,
or you could work through the DMs, but you're not gonna work through the actual physically going on the date.
I would just hope that you better not ever go on a date. That'll put me on Snapped. not really. But I just would hope, you know, that I get to a point in life where I find a man that, you know, loves me to the point to where
he don't desire to do those things.
He don't desire to do those things. That it's not even a conversation. That he knows that it's a partnership.
Right.
And that what it is that we're working on, he wants it just as much as I do. Right.
I think that goes into when people say that you really, how do you feel about people saying that you really need to marry somebody that's your best friend?
That's who I am. That's kind of my slogan. Because if I don't like you as a friend, I can't even like you
enough to love you.
Right? Because I live in my own world.
Mm-hmm.
I live in my own world. Don't nobody live in this world. My kids will never live in this world. My husband will never live in this world. This is a perfect world that only Tanisha lives in, and I'm always trying to troubleshoot.
Y'all, this is what I be dealing with. Go ahead.
I'm trying to troubleshoot and figure out, you know, what it is, and for the people around me. And this is a perfect world, like real life perfect world. And I need you to understand this and know that, like, you don't mess up my perfect world, and I'm gonna help you create your own perfect world. Yeah. And we gonna live together, and we gonna communicate, and we gonna make this thing work so that our children can create this perfect world, and whatever that means. And it doesn't mean that bad things doesn't happen, but it means that you know how to navigate, and you know how to look at it from a different perspective, that you're not overwhelmed, that you don't feel sad, that you don't feel these different type of angers for things that's happening around you, because you have your own internal personal peace within you.
I think that's a good pin moment if this was an IG live conversation. Like the good internal peace within you that no outside forces can like change it. Because you didn't
give it to me, right?
Right.
And so you know how like you find these things of like, I would never be one of those people, and it's no shade, but I would never be one of those people that said, like, my husband completed me. My husband did not complete me.
So I struggle with that, too. Like, when you feel like, when they talk about soulmates or, finding somebody that completes them, like, you want to date somebody that's already whole, healthy, and complete before they get with you. So then it's like a bonus.
And I'm even still willing to do some of the healing with you, but I can't heal you.
No.
And I know that I cannot heal you, and I need you to be whole and be able and be willing to work on these things.
Yeah, because there's a difference when somebody comes into a relationship with excess baggage or versus somebody who's doing the work, like in the process of unpacking those bags.
And so, you know, for me, I'm already a whole cake, baby.
Yeah.
Come ice it. Change the frosting or something like that, and give me a different world or a different frosting that I don't know about. Expose me to something new. Teach me something.
So that's on your list too. You want a man? That's me. I think every woman has that on her list though.
What?
Like having a partner that they feel like they can learn from. A person that you can gain something. You can teach me new things or show me different. Show me different.
But you know, I feel like that about my friendships too. Like, I don't need people like me. I don't necessarily need the person who thinks like me. I don't necessarily need the person who's interested in everything that I'm interested in either. I need somebody to broaden my horizon.
I was going to say, that's life in general, though. You can't be the smartest person in your circle. You want to be around people who can cultivate different relationships for you, but also show you, like you said, different aspects of the world. Like me and my friend, I'll actually say Morgan, taught me about wine. I knew nothing about the wine world, but I appreciate her for that, because now I can go to have conversations in dominant rooms with people and be like, oh, can I have this? At least I know what to order off the drink menu and not look crazy. So
and so I don't necessarily need you, you know, to be interested in everything I'm interested in. And just because you're interested in it don't mean that I'm going to be, but at least I have the knowledge. But I think that's where,
so when we go back to saying date somebody who's your best friend or marry somebody that's your best friend, I think people get hung up on that though, because that doesn't have to look like, oh, he or she likes concerts and I do too, and so, oh, they like to play basketball or blah, blah, blah. Like, y'all don't have to have the same exact hobbies and interests in order to be friends, because some of the stuff Nisha is into, y'all, I'm not into. Nisha likes makeup. She likes clothes. She likes the Barbie doll girly thing. I'm more of the chill one, but until she makes me her Barbie doll, then it's different. I like it then. I just don't take the initiative to want to just do it myself.
Yeah. So, and I think it's completely fine, you know, and even having these conversations sometimes with different men. And I'm like, oh, okay, you know, like that makes sense. Like that's one of those things. And so I've always been in committed relationships, like my entire
I'm definitely the relationship girl. And I needed to be like Lori Harvey early on.
Yeah, and that's why I said earlier, I wish somebody would have told me that And just like, you know, you don't have to have sex. You don't have to be promiscuous or anything like that. But you date and you really figure out what you like, because what I like now is not what I liked at 23.
No.
Or, you know, or even
But when you say you don't have to have sex, I think I don't want to just leave that there, but I think sometimes people think when they're dating these multiple people that you owe them that, and you don't.
And you don't, though. And I think that's like, why do you feel like anybody owes, you know,
no, because you do meet people, both men and women, who feel like if they give you time and attention, that they feel like that's something like a benefit that's supposed to happen. And I just need y'all to understand that it's not a benefit. And I also not something you're entitled to either.
And I also think the love language, physical touch, has put it out there that people are like, oh, my love language is physical touch, and this person didn't want to have sex or whatever like that. And if you don't feel inclined to have sex, or you don't feel comfortable enough in that intimate space to have sex with that person, then I think that's a red flag. And
me too.
We miss too many red flags
all the time.
It's like that person was pressuring me to do something I didn't want to do, and I felt uncomfortable.
I remember when I was in a relationship and we were dating. Well, we were in this relationship. There's a difference. So I guess we can talk about that dating and in a relationship. But we were in this relationship for about like maybe 8 months, and I still didn't want to have sex with him. And so he gave me like this ultimatum, like, oh, you know, girls are doing it, blah, 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 all of this bullcrap. And then I remember the day that I talked myself into giving myself that way. And I felt so bad because I called my daddy. And y'all know, I'm a daddy's girl to the max. But when you call your daddy about something like that, you really feel away. And I called my daddy. I'm like, well, this happened. And he was like, you like what? Like, you let him talk you into doing this? Don't you ever let a man like tell you this is what you should be doing and how you should be doing it? And I remember in that moment, I was like, why did I do that to myself? And then I was like, I had to ask myself, like, did you feel obligated because, okay, I'm his girlfriend. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. But I didn't want to. And I think I should have just listened to that then, because I was in a space where, you know, I wanted to be like celibate. I wanted to take my time. I wanted to date as a mature adult in a healthy headspace. And then I was dating someone who was like, oh, well, this is like a non-negotiable for me. And I should have let his little non-negotiable go somewhere else, like, you know, and kept my sanity. But I think, like you said, sometimes we just bend the rules too much for people when you feel like they're entitled to you and you love them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That you're making like this sacrifice.
Right.
Or, you know, something. And that's in those moments when you really have to honor those commitments to yourself.
Right.
And, you know, because most of the time you will leave feeling like gross or disgusted with that person.
And it changed the whole outlook on a relationship, because then later, like as life plays out, you feel like this person always feels entitled to you and you always have to say yes to them because you gave in that one time. Yeah. So it just like opened a whole other door.
Yeah, it opens a whole can of worms because it keeps reappearing in other places, not just sex, but now maybe it's money or something like that.
Or how we're spending time
together. Yeah, and what this really looks like in those moments. And so, like, if you have to set those boundaries with yourself, that I don't even put myself in a room where somebody even thinks that I'm going to have sex with
Definitely.
them. You know, you have to set boundaries within dating, and you have to set them early and up front and actually make that commitment to yourself of what that really looks like.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I'm not even going in a room, right, where it's only me and him.
Yeah.
Where it's a point to, I'm not visiting homes, you're not coming to my house. None of these things are happening, you know, to the point to where you can even think that I'm going to give you my body.
But I think that just goes back to knowing how much real control you have in a situation. Like, you know, you have ultimate control. And I think sometimes women forget that they have the ultimate control too, because then you like ideas when guys are like, oh, I'm gonna cultivate the date. Like, you love Niggas who come to you and be like, oh, I got this date plan, like this dope date plan. And then what if that includes like this intimate setting in his house? And you're like, oh, I haven't had intimacy like this before, you know? Then you want to feel entitled to go there, but you still don't have to feel like this is something I have to do, because you can still say no. But I just think I like the idea of you speaking to the fact of women owning their own power and knowing,
owning and walking in it. But I think these are conversations, like that you have to have. What are your boundaries? Like, this is a no for me. Like, you cannot call me after 11 o'clock. You know, even as a grown woman, like, no, don't call me after 11.
And I think something that came up the other day in conversation with you and I and another one of your friends is like, you just even normalizing the idea of telling people that you're dating other people, right? So
that's a difficult one though. But you know me, I don't feel like it's nobody's business. Yeah, like for me, build your whole basketball roster. You know, if you need starting 5, whatever it is, and you swap
it's nobody's business.
It's nobody's business. Yeah. And whoever proposes first, may the best man win. And if you don't like that proposal, don't accept the proposal. Like, that's kind of where I'm at with it. Like,
but then I feel like some people will feel like you're ultimately playing with feelings. So say you got this basketball team or this roster, or these starting 3, whatever, starting 5, whatever. And all of them really ultimately start catching feelings and want to learn about you more, want to be into you more, want more of your time and attention. Then how do you manage that?
I think you manage it based on how you feel as well.
Of who you like the most.
Who you like the most, yeah. Because it's still your power that you're walking within, because you have the decision and you have the right to control and navigate how all of this works.
So ultimately, on the other side, if this man was doing that, you're okay with that too?
I mean, most of the time they are. What do you mean? Am I okay?
So these just be unspoken conversations in your love life.
I don't ask. I'm not asking you about your past. I don't care who you've been with.
Yeah.
I don't care what you're doing until it comes to a point to where we have to have this conversation about being mutually exclusive. If we're not having this conversation about it just being me and you, what is it a need for you to know about?
So do you feel like opening the conversation? I mean, not having the conversation about being mutually exclusive, it gives you the pass to date all of these people.
Yes.
I like that you said it. I think, go ahead.
I think too many times we go mutually exclusive
without having the conversation.
And it's women, like, we're stuck on the end of, like, you know, we're not dating anybody else. We're not talking to anybody else. And then the man like, oh, I didn't tell
But then people try to hit you with the line like, oh, I like to get to know one person at a time.
Okay, that's
your choice.
And that's your choice, right? That's your personal preference that you only want to get to know one person at a time. Yeah. And then I think I feel
like we need to normalize that too. Like you said, dating multiple people and being okay with the idea that you can get to know multiple people, and you can like them. You can like them.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times we don't know. You can't like something you've never been exposed to, right? And so I think that also comes back to dating multiple people you wouldn't normally date, you know, and even
that has been kind of juicy, like, in life lately, like dating people that outside the box. Like, okay, normally he's not my type, so I wouldn't go for that, but I'm gonna try to date him anyway and see what that looks like, and you could actually like the person.
I mean, yeah, because like I hadn't ever dated an African before. Yeah. And that's what I've been dating for like the past year. And it's been different just because, you know, like culturally and even thinking about like the way in which they spend money, their habits.
And how they show up, even their confidence level is kind of different.
Their confidence, how they show up. And so I pick what I like out of everybody. Like, ooh, I like that in him, da-da-da-da-da, and really just figure out, because when you thinking about, like, the Build a Bear workshop.
I can't.
How can you build a man? Let me see which characteristics that I kind of like.
So then at what point do you feel like, where's the compromise? What are you willing to compromise?
Oh, I ain't really willing to compromise too much or nothing.
So I'm saying, if you have this idea of a Build-A-Bear, a Build-A-Man, and you like this quality in this person, this quality in that, this one person might not encompass all of those things.
Recently, what I've been compromising is height. Normally, I'm a 6 foot. All right. I'm a 6 foot.
So, y'all, just for the record, I like men who tend to be taller as well.
And she thinks all of 4'8".
And she thinks that I cannot be entitled to that, and I can.
I didn't say you cannot be entitled to it, but I do believe I am I'm about 5'4", 5'5", right?
Okay.
You
can date somebody that's shorter than you.
I'm not, because that's short. I mean, that's short as a man. 5'5" is short as a man. And so if I put on heels, which most of the time I have on heels, if I'm going on a date or doing anything, I'm at least 5'8" to 5'9". And so that
you need somebody that's 6 feet or taller.
No, I've been that's been my latest compromise.
Oh yes.
That I've been going to about 5'10".
Okay.
That if I somewhere like the 5 longest, if I put on my heels, my head is not over your head. That's been one of the things. Normally I would not compromise that. Normally I didn't like light skinned guys. You know, it's been a lot of compromises that I have come up, and most of them are physical.
No shade to the light skinned guys.
No shades.
I like browns too.
I like browns and dark.
Yeah,
and black.
But moving on.
But I think that's been like physical has been some of the things that I've.
Yeah, because I was gonna say, like, what age do we feel like, you know, do we feel like, okay, it is what my parents said. It is how the person treats you. You know, that matters the most.
I think that's always what matters the most.
But I don't feel like we always... me personally, I'll speak for me. I don't feel like I always bought into that narrative because I was like, got treated nice, but how you looked and showed up mattered a lot to me too.
But I think some of the things...
It just goes into people saying that women don't never like the nice guy, which I think in my adulthood, I think as a child it was probably true. As an adult now, I do like the nice guy. You live and you learn, though.
I mean, you live and you learn. And I think, like, as you date, you learn its levels to niceness. Like, you like, oh, my God. Like, it's men out here doing this.
Right.
It's men out
here. And I was excited because he was opening the door.
Yeah, right. And then you like, oh, you doing this, you doing that.
Yeah.
And so I think it's kind of one of those things of really envisioning like the lifestyle and the way that you desire to be treated.
Yeah.
And some of those things that you know, like for a fact that you need in a relationship.
Right.
You know, because everybody's look differently about what they need. What I may need, you know.
But what do you think, like, at what age do you feel like you started knowing, like, these are the things that I need? When you knew yourself enough to know what it is that you even needed?
I mean, I think it's evolving every single day. But I think probably, like, within these last 3 years of my singleness and just kind of, like, dating and figuring out, like, for me, and I always tell you, like, we have to normalize. Just stop talking to people before, you know, it blows up. It doesn't have to have this big bad wolf.
So she said, what she said was, what I always tell you is because I'm the friend who needs the dramatic ending.
Like, it got to be dramatic.
Yeah, like, I be like, okay, God, I'm saying this prayer now. Like, make something happen so I can know it's you talking. You telling me that I got to be detached from this person. And then it'll be something crazy like, he cheated, I found out. Or, like, there was, in one situation, it was a car accident, and he was in the car with the girl.
Like, yeah, she need the big, like, shaboom.
Fireworks.
Like,
I be getting the fireworks. It'd be like, okay, this is the red flag. Keep past the red flag. Another one. I'm going to keep past the red flag. Up another one. Then it's destruction.
She needs the destruction. Like, she don't want to take the warning before destruction. She wants the destruction. And I think that's one of the things that we have to normalize is leaving before destruction. Like, you don't have to, you know, go through all of these heartbreaks, or you can save yourself some extra time of getting, you know, to the end. If you really hold on to the red flags, like, you know what? Actually, that is a red flag. Because why did this trigger him so much? What is it that I did that triggered him so much? Because if we think anything about psychology says that, you know, your perception is your reality, right? And so how you perceive what's going on around you is really what comes to light. And nothing that I do is a reflection of something really that you did. It's really how I perceived what you did.
But I think people don't start processing it until later. And I think I recall one of the girls in the group chat, HeyNewFriends group chat, saying, like, when you get to 25 is when you really start dating seriously. It's like, I'm going to pay attention to everything because this isn't just fun for me anymore. This is like, I want to build a life. I would even play with 28. It's probably 28 is probably when I'm really was gonna be like, well, when I thought about it more, like, okay, like, let me process this. How did this really make me feel? Why was, like you said, why was this a trigger? Like, you know, how this person reaction, how do I navigate that space? And is that something, a quality or trait that I'm willing to carry into the years, knowing that this person might not change that behavior? And I think before 28, I was pretty much like, oh, whatever. It is what it is.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really, really important for us to think about, like, in those moments of, like, sometimes you gotta break your own heart before you even.
When you told me that, I was like, that was a bar. Like, break your own heart, sis.
Yeah, like, you steady praying to God, like, oh, God, like, give me a sign. Girl, break your own heart because, like, at the end of the day, it's nothing nobody can say or do.
And it's not like it's even your first heartbreak. So, like, we were driving in the car earlier, and I was like, you know what? I know how I was able to get over this situation because it reminded me of that situation. And so people go through heartbreaks, but I feel like ultimately they be feeling the same.
I mean, yeah. And I think, you know, sometimes you can't even bypass heartbreak, but I think you can save yourself a little more heartache and break your own heart by breaking it off with the person or doing whatever you need to do to feel good. Because some days, you know, it will get darker. It won't be as bright. It won't feel as good, but you will get through it. And waiting on somebody to apologize to you, waiting to have this conversation of closure,
real too.
You know, waiting on all of those things, you will be left somewhere
with a broken heart. Like,
beyond
that's not even gonna mend because you're not even taking the time to mend it. Yeah, like you won't allow yourself the healing because you feel like somebody owes you something.
My last ex, I just got an apology.
That's like almost 3 years later.
3 years later.
Yeah.
Like, imagine how bitter I would be had I waited on him to give me that apology. Had I begged him, had I sent text messages or, threatening letters, sending these emails and doing all of these things, waiting on that man to apologize to me. It took him 3 years to say, you know what, you are a really good person. Whoever, and what he gonna do, like, and it ain't make me feel no better. I looked at it almost disgusted. Like, why would you apologize to me?
Why would you even reach out and say it now?
3 years later, but that's his conscience. That's his life. And that's when he came to terms with it. Yeah. But I couldn't sit there and wait on him to
And that could have been a part of his healing, too. Like, when he was finally doing the work for himself, he had to go back and rectify that situation.
But that was his healing.
Right.
That had nothing to do with my healing. It was nothing that he could have said. It was nothing that he could have did that would have made me feel any differently about those things. And so, heartbreak is hard, but you have to do that really intentional work and figure out, why is this hurting me so much? What was my reality and what was my perception of what I thought it should have been? And those things that
I think you got to do a job of you have to do a job of recognizing patterns. And so as you get older, like even me and myself, I can see patterns in my relationships, and I'm like, you repeated that lesson and you already learned from it, but you continue to do the same lesson.
Didn't learn from it.
No, I felt like I learned enough to be okay with it in that situation, but then I like bypassed it when it presented itself in another form in another situation. But when I got to the root of it, it was that same thing. So you're right. Maybe I didn't 100% learn the lesson at its core, but it just showed up in a different way. And it was like, this is the same, like the exact same patterns and behaviors that you were so disgusted about or turned off on, and you allow them to carry over into this situation.
And so that's the thing, though, right? You cannot heal what you don't reveal.
Yeah.
And so if you didn't put those things in your forefront to actually heal through them, and you like, oh, okay, whatever. When you go into your next relationship, you're not going to be
and you don't really pay attention to it. And I think it's also a part of avoidance, too. Like, you bury it and you don't really think about it. Because some people say that they sit there and reflect on their relationships once they're over and say, hey, like, where were the happy moments? What were the bad moments? What did I learn from that? But I guarantee you, 9 times out of 10, people don't do that.
And see, that was one of the things that was really crucial to my healing. When I looked, like, okay, maybe it wasn't my fault how the relationship ended, but I did play a part in some of these things. So if I continuously think about my self-improvement and what are the things that I went wrong, I'm not necessarily that woman that has the affirmations, all right? I'm not the one who necessarily speaks the words. I'm going to always show up for you.
Yeah.
I'm going to always make sure you have whatever you need, that you're good. But I'm not the person that, like, I have congratulations. I have all of that. I will pray for you. But I'm not the woman every day that wakes up like, oh, my husband's so fine. Look at him and tell him.
I'm that woman.
And I'm not, right? So that's what I can look at from, like, my past relationships and say, okay, this is something that I didn't do. How can I work on this moving forward?
Yeah.
Because it is really important. We talk about these love languages, but ultimately, you need
For
all
the record,
of them.
I'd be tired of talking about love languages. Yeah. I feel like it's just so, like, people are just beating us in the head with love languages lately. I hate the conversation, but yes, ultimately I want all of them. I think everybody desires all of them to some certain extent. So I think people need to stop honing in on these 1 or 2 that they feel like these are what I need. These are the 2 that I need. Like, you need them all.
Well, I do think it's one that's more dominant.
The first one, the one that's at the top of your list. I'm sure that's why it's the very first one. But you still need all of them. I guess. Maybe I'm getting sidetracked, y'all, but I guess I'm just tired of the Clubhouse conversations and all the other conversations where people are just talking about love languages, and I feel like a relationship is more than love and love languages and things like that. So, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's very true. But I was just saying, I think it's really important to reflect on those on the things that you do for yourself and kind of like, what are these characteristics? What did I gain? Internally for myself, not just what, I lost or what the relationship didn't do or how it didn't turn out, but really try to turn those into the positives and really think about your relationship moving forward.
Yeah, but when you do that, like, not necessarily a catch-22, but when you do that, sometimes people can fall into the trap of overcompensating because they feel like they lack in the area. So, like, you could be in a new situation that has multiple red flags, but you'll be like, oh, well, I used to speak up too much in my last relationships. I used to out-talk him, so I'm going to stop. I'm not going to say much. I'm going to become a mute now because I used to talk too much in my last relationship, and you still in a bad relationship, so don't be quiet.
Well, that's why I said look at the positive.
Yeah.
Like, the positive that you gain from the relationship and how you can really cultivate those things.
Yeah, but I think what I was just simply saying is still give yourself grace too.
Like, I think that's every day. That's 365.
Yeah.
You really have to give yourself grace. And that the heartbreak isn't your fault. And sometimes that person really, like, as much as you may think that person was for you or that person was your husband, that
so can we normalize listening to God's voice instead of your own? Like,
that should be up here, honey. Like, that should be. I do,
but I think sometimes people will pray, and it's so funny because I was in a situation where my mother was like, I said, no, Ma, God told me this. And she was like, did God tell you that, or did you tell yourself that? Or did you convince yourself that God was telling you that because you wanted it so bad? That's what you wanted. And I had to think about that thing, like, she right. Maybe I convinced myself. And, like, God, I really didn't hear God say that. But I was like, oh, you check this box, that box. God said it. Like,
yeah. But also, like, waiting feels lonely.
Yeah.
Right? And so I know it was really funny. Like, a song I was listening to earlier, it said, you know, I am alone, but I am not lonely. And
that's all we listen to in the car.
Yeah.
Oh, Lordy.
Don't talk about it. The song is basically, and I think it was really good though, because although you are alone, you don't have to feel this loneliness. Like, work on yourself, you know, really figure out what you like, you know, what you don't like. Yeah. Pick up a skill or any of those things so that I am a wife. Like, you know, you're saying, like, oh, my husband, he might find me. Or I was going to say,
but you're a wife before you're actually a wife by the book or by the law.
Right. Yeah. And so whatever being a wife looks like for you, work on that. You know, figure those things out. And then pray over that husband that you feel like, you know, it's coming.
I think that's very important, though, to actually have an idea. Because sometimes people be like, oh, you make these lists. Don't be a list girl. But I think there are qualities and traits that you can desire in a man, and you can put that forth. You can manifest it. We live in a manifestation age where it's more prevalent now, but we've always had that power. Mm-hmm. But I feel like people should start manifesting the things that's on their list.
Mm-hmm. Especially those good things. Yeah. And so some of our friends from HeyNewFriends actually have some tips for our audience on today. And one of them...
so we actually, just to give you guys the backstory, we have this group chat and we be having some dope conversations. But today, Sade posed the question. What was the question?
So the question was, what are some things you all wish someone would have told you about dating earlier in life?
Yeah.
And so our friend Kayla said, the importance of maintaining your individuality, not losing sight of or neglecting the things you like to do for yourself. Maintaining balance amongst all things.
Definitely. I think it's so, I hear a lot, I've never been married before, but I hear a lot of married women say they lose themselves in their relationships and their kids and things like that. They don't have a sense of identity anymore. And then it's a real thing. Like, people go through depression, like, who am I? You know?
Yeah, but I think, you know, we go through spells of really just trying to figure out what I'm like, and even thinking about, like, what you were interested in. You don't have to always stay interested in it. That you can.
No, you evolve, though.
Yeah, you evolve in those moments.
I think Serena was next, and she said, to honor the vulnerability of a person and to look out for things that trigger them. Communication is more than words.
Definitely body language, and when you feel like you've been ghosted, you know, or any of those things, that sometimes it really is deeper, and we sometimes miss those signs that people are displaying, that they may have not been ready for a relationship or ready for whatever it is that you were asking for, and we miss those, like, vital, or maybe we ignore them.
Or like she said, like, communication is just it's more than words. So those nonverbal cues, like how I'm starting to look in this space when you pose this question or when you made this gesture, or, like, you know, how am I showing up? Like, that should be like, you should be able to read me.
Especially how you're showing up.
Yeah.
Like, just because you're there doesn't necessarily mean you're
present.
There. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
This is a really good one that I live by, and I always tell all of my friends. Our friend Lanice said not to fall in love with potential. Some people may never reach or live up to who you who you potentially think they could be, right? And in those moments, I think like that's tea, honey.
I feel like that's tea too, and I think that when it goes back to us saying like when we're dating from the 21 to the 25, you looked at life differently. But I feel like we need to start looking at life, period, at this way.
Yeah, because if that person
and
never
not even just in relationships, in friendships too.
Yeah, and just because I see something in you, that doesn't mean that you feel the same about that.
Right.
And if you never reach that potential, can I live with the fact that
you're this person?
You're this person.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think a lot of times we think we're healers.
Yeah.
And that we have the power to heal people. And unless they want to be healed and doing the work for themselves.
Yeah, because some people will tell you, like, I never asked you for that.
Yeah.
Like,
I never asked you for that. I did this for you. I did that. I didn't ask you. And people are really quick to say that. I didn't ask you for that. I didn't ask you to do that.
That was a good one, Lanice. You going to read the next one?
Amma said, take the lessons from previous relationships, not the people. We're all unique, and even if you have a type or a pattern, everyone should start on a clean slate. And I think that is really true.
Yeah, it's so funny because all of my friends, especially Brie, will always be like, I don't know how you able to do this. Like, dating horror stories. We'll get into them another time deeply, but I'm always the one who's able to bounce back and still like move forward in grace and start over and be kind to people and never feel like somebody's coming with like an agenda, Like, just let people show up and it's like, okay, until you go left, I'm going to think you're this perfect, innocent person.
I think that's really important, especially talking about that clean slate. I think a lot of people bring baggage, right?
Right.
And I think that's really just going back to being healed.
Mm-hmm.
When you're healed and you don't necessarily be like, oh, okay, this is triggering me.
Yeah.
Because my last boyfriend did this.
But some people don't want to say that. Like, some women or men don't want to come out and be like, this is why it's triggering me. And I think people need to be comfortable with those conversations too, to admit that you're triggered and say what it's triggered about. Because sometimes if you associate it with the past, people look at it like, oh, she or he is still going to think I'm stuck on that person. So I don't want to admit that. But it's real.
But triggers are really unresolved trauma.
Yeah.
And so when you think about, like, why is this still triggering you? And it's not even necessarily because that's the same way of, like, I feel some type of way about this new guy I'm dating because the last guy in the past, he had a male best friend. And, had a female best friend. And so now the next man I date, he can't have a female best friend. Like, that's what I'm saying. But you have to really think about the reason why,
that's real.
It's so triggering to me. And it's most of the time because something somebody in your past, did something and you have this association with it. Like, nobody I date can have a female best friend. And it's really unrealistic, right?
Definitely.
Unrealistic, but you want to feel like it is because your past is like knocking at the door. Like, you remember he had a girlfriend.
Yeah, then the mind is a crazy like spider web anyway. So as soon as you start thinking that one thing, like you can create scenarios in your head like this happened because of that happened. I'm gonna assume this happened and this is what he's gonna do next because I know like this happened to me before. So, and then you could just be making up a whole story and creating a life that does not exist beyond what you already got.
Yeah.
Save yourself the stress, sis.
Yes, clean slates, lady.
I think lastly we have never settle too early. If you see a red flag that is a deal breaker, believe it. Dating for potential should stop at 25. And we got to talk about that too.
Yeah. Yep. And so for me, my biggest lesson is put me in a coach game. Put me in the game.
I can't. So we know you got your starting five. I get it.
I don't have them yet, but that's a part of 2021 to get the starting five, honey.
I love it. I think for me, I think my dating this year will look like it might not be necessarily starting five because I don't got the time and attention span for a starting five, but I might have a starting three, maybe a two. Anyway, I'm just going to do what feels good to me. Moving along.